is there an obligation to make something special, a special dish or a special meal in honor of Chanuka? We find on Chagim, on Shabbat, even on Rosh Chodesh, we have a mitzvah to make something sometimes it's a whole meal, sometimes it's to make an extra dish in honor of the occasion. Do we have the same halacha on Chanukah? So it says in Shulchan Aruch that the days of Chanukah were determined by our sages in order to give praise and thanks to Hashem, but they were not days which were given to us, to the sages, for making rejoicing and making a festive meal. And they say that is actually one of the main differences between Chanukah and Purim. On Purim, they did tell us we have to make a special meal in honor of the day, whereas on Chanukah not. What's the reason for the difference? So the reason is mentioned is as follows, that on Chanukah, the decree against the Jewish people was to spiritually annihilate the Jewish people. It wasn't a physical threat. If a Jew, Chas v'Shalom, would be prepared to renounce his Judaism and go over to the Greek ways, he would be accepted. In other words, it was not necessarily a threat to his life. Whereas on Purim, where the threat was to the physical existence of the Jewish people, and the Gzeirah was to physically annihilate them. Therefore, when the miracle took place on Chanukah, we celebrate the fact that we're still physically here, and therefore we make a meal to celebrate that physical salvation. Whereas on Chanukah, since the salvation was a spiritual salvation and not a physical one, we celebrate it in spiritual ways through thanks and praise to Hashem rather than through a festive meal. So this is one ruling, that there's no obligation to make a special meal. However, there is an opinion, and this is opinion of the Ramah, who is the leading Ashkenazic posek, who's mentioned in Shulchan Aruch, and he says that there is a mitzvah, a slight mitzvah, called a partial mitzvah, to make something in addition for during the days of Chanukah. And the reason for this is because during the days of Chanukah, two things happened. First of all, when the Jewish people were in the wilderness and they were coming after they came out of Egypt, before they came into Eretz Yisrael, they were given a command to make the tabernacle, the Mishkan. They completed the work for making everything in the Mishkan was completed on the 25th of Kislev, which is the first day of Hanukkah. However, Hashem said, we're not putting up the Mishkan, we're not putting up the tabernacle until the month of Nisan, because he wanted to set up and to inaugurate it, and the month in which Yitzchak Avinu was born. But it says in the Midrash that Hashem wanted to give a compensation to the month of Kislev, that it didn't merit to have the Mishkan erected in its time, and it transferred it to this was made up during the days of Hanukkah. So in a way, we're celebrating also the Mishkan in the wilderness. And the other reason is because during the time of the Hashmonaim, during the miracle of Hanukkah, and the Beis Hamikdash, the temple was in ruins, and when it was reinaugurated and the temple service was reinstated, we celebrate that, and we celebrate it by making something extra. So this is why he says it actually is somewhat of a mitzvah to make something a little bit extra in honor of the day. He says that in order for it to be regarded as a sudat mitzvah, that it's actually a mitzvah to make this extra suda, this extra thing, one should spend the time when one is making this special meal, and he should use the time and the opportunity to talk about the miracle and to sing the praises of Hashem. If he does that, it's regarded as a mitzvah according to everybody, because then one is using this opportunity, this special meal with the special dishes prepared, as an opportunity to say praises and thanks to Hashem. So it comes out according to this, it's not an obligation to make something extra. However, it's not a bad idea to do so, and while one is doing it, one should take the opportunity to say the praises and thanks to Hashem, and then it's regarded actually as a mitzvah. We know that there's a custom during the days of Chanukah to eat dairy products. The reason for this is because part of the miracle was initiated by a woman called Yehudit, who was the daughter of Yochanan Cohen Gadol, and it says that we're told in the Midrash that she gave the Greek governor a lot of milk, dairy things to eat. He became very thirsty, and then she gave him wine. He became drunk and fell asleep, and then she actually killed him and cut off his head and brought it to Jerusalem, and the enemies fled. So to remember this, we eat dairy products during it's actually mentioned in Shulchan Aruch to eat dairy things during the days of Chanukah. As far as eating things which are fried in oil, like donuts and latkes, well-known custom, this actually is not mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch at all. This custom, it's mentioned eat dairy, but not things fried in oil. However, we find in the writings of Rabbeinu Maimon, the father of the Rambam, he says that there was a custom to eat things fried in oil, and he says that this minhag is old-time minhag, a custom of the Jewish people, and one should not make any levity or shortfalls in a well-established Jewish custom.